What's going on, people? It's your boy Kelechi back with another episode of the Rambling Mind Podcast. How are each and every single one of y'all doing today? I hope y'all are staying safe. I hope y'all are taking care of yourselves. I hope y'all are doing all the things you know you ought to do during these times. Man, I have a topic I gotta get off my chest. I gotta talk about that. So as you all know, or if you haven't heard the news, Biden announced a loan forgiveness program for millions and millions of students, people who own student loans, $10,000 for those who make up to $125,000. And if you're part of the Pell Grant, you get $20,000 of your student loans forgiven, which when I heard this news, I was celebrating. Here's the thing. I ain't got student loans, but I was celebrating nonetheless. I thought everybody would celebrate this news. However, that's not exactly what you saw once I started being on the Twitters and the Instagrams and the Facebook. Well, who goes on Facebook? I don't go on Facebook. But on TikTok and reading articles and all this stuff. And I realized, wow, we are such a divided nation in America. Like, dang, like people really on both sides of the thing, really being upset about this. And I was like, why are people so upset? At first, I was about to give the same energy back and just be like, no, y'all stupid. Y'all dumb. Y'all don't understand how this is good. Y'all you know how we usually do because we get upset and then nobody listens to each other. And I was like, that's part of the problem. That right there is part of the problem. But then from that little idea of just thinking about, man, why are people so upset about this? It led me to something that Morgan Housel said in his book, Psychology of Money, or rather something he talked about in his book is no one's crazy, which is basically the idea that we all view the world from our perspective. He said, he has a quote in here that's pretty good. He said, your personal experience makes up 0.00001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. In other words, how we have viewed the world, our perspective of how the world is how we think everybody else experiences the world. And I think that plays a huge role into how people are going about in their arguments for why this is good or this is bad. If you talk to somebody from a perspective of everybody in their family has gone to college, their parents paid their way to college, they paid their way to college, they had student debt, they paid off their student loans. For them, it makes no sense that, and they come from a background where their family did well, their family had money, their family helped them out with different things, even though they had to pay their own way through college. But, their family was basically set. They didn't have to think about their family too much, right? For them, it makes no sense that these student loans should be forgiven because it's like, pull up your bootstraps and get to work. Go pick up some extra shifts. Go do this, go do that, and pay off your damn loans. Why should I be the one to cover your damn loans? That will make no sense to me. But then you look at another perspective of somebody who is the first person in their family to go to college, and they graduated from college. They're the first person in their family to make more than $50,000 in their lives, which means they're making a little bit more money than everybody else in their context. But because they're the first, they can't just keep moving on their own and say, forget all you guys. I'm just going to do my thing. So what do they have to do? They have to now start thinking about the debts of their parents. They have to start thinking about their family back home. They have to think about making sure that they help the little kids and everybody back home. In other words, the money that they earn is not just their own money. Perspective. The money that they are making is not for them alone. They are the first to make it out, but they got to help everybody else back home. And so we have two very different perspectives. You have the perspective of the hardworking person. They may be working in the exact same company. They're making the exact same amount of dollars. On one side, the person who is making, let's say $100,000, they ain't got to do anything for their parents. They ain't got to do anything for anybody back home. They just got to take care of they themselves. On the other side, you have somebody who's making $100,000 as well. However, they got to send some money back home, make sure they're helping their parents pay their bills, make sure their parents aren't going so much into debt for everything, make sure that uncle or that aunt that they heard about, they give them a little bit of pocket money so they can do some things. Two completely different perspectives. Neither of them are wrong. Both are right. But it comes down simply to how we see the world. Because most people don't have the ability nor want the ability to see things from more of an eagle eye perspective of like, yo, it makes sense why the Biden administration is doing this, because the pressure that student loans is putting on people is ridiculous. But at the same time, it makes sense why people are calling this out and saying, yo, there is a danger in us doing this. This could be inflationary. This can become an expectation that everybody who takes a loan out can just expect to get bailed out. On both sides, it's a fair argument. And I think both arguments are very true. However, I fall more on the side where I think this is necessary to be done. Because when I look at the numbers of who actually gets helped from this student loans, about 80% of the student loans is going to help people who make less than $75,000 a year. The median income in the United States is about $50,000. Most of the people that it's actually going to help are people who actually never graduated from college. And then you're going to be like, why should we help people who didn't graduate from college? Well, if you took a second to actually listen to some of their stories, you might understand. I've been reading articles about so many different people and how this student loan forgiveness, and even more so how the moratorium has helped them so much. I read a story about somebody who went to college, was on the right track of college, was doing everything, was going to be successful in college and going to have a great job coming out on the other side. But then they lost a parent. And so they had to drop everything and go back home to ensure that they took care of their family. And now this student loan is hanging like a stone over their head, hanging by a thread every single day. They don't know if they're going to make it the next day. And the amount of joy that they had the moment that they heard about this forgiveness, because it's going to wipe out all their loans. They don't have up to $10,000. It's going to wipe out everything. For that person, wouldn't you want that? Wouldn't you want that person to be able to, who's already contributing to the economy, but now can contribute even more so to the economy? They can maybe start a business, maybe go back to school. They can take risks. And if there's one thing that the United States allows for people to do, is take risks. But we've basically capped that. You talk to young people today, one of the things they talk about is, I don't want to take student loans because I don't think the risk to the reward ratio is worth it. And so a lot of people just cap their earning potential. I'm not saying you can't build a business or do all these things without going to college. I'm just saying for most people, that's not the norm. To be able to get to where you want to get to, for most people, that degree is powerful. Now, I'm not saying all degrees are made the same. That's not true. Some degrees are going to make you stand out better than others. That's just the way it works right now. But I still think that this loan forgiveness is important. However, I will also give the argument back to other people who say that's not going to solve the problem. The problem still remains that education cost in the United States is still freaking too high. It's too high. There should be a cap, or there should be provisions within the loan forgiveness that says colleges, if you have to put out how many of your students actually get jobs after they graduate. And if you're not, then people don't have to pay for their college experience. If most people who are graduating from your school can't get a job, then you don't deserve for your money to be paid back. And so the government should be putting these stipulations in there to force colleges to do what they're supposed to do. And not just supercharge everybody a ridiculous amount of money. On the other side, I also think that the government should eliminate interest on student loans. Why does the government need to be making 5 to 10% on a student loan? Why? Why? If anything, if they have to absolutely make some money off of these loans, then make it at like literally 2%, the rate that banks loan to each other. Or even like the Fed funds rate, which is the rate that banks loan to each other. Because this is an investment for the economy. So there are arguments on both sides. But my main point that I wanted to bring out in this episode is the idea that our perspective matters. Where we come from matters. Morgan Housel talks about it in the book. He has a good example of how just our perspective plays such a massive role. He talked about just how we see the rest of the world and how Americans tend to always see the world through the American perspective, right? There's a little excerpt in the book that he says, he wrote a little thing. He says, A few years ago, the New York Times did a story on the working condition of Foxconn, the massive Taiwanese electronics manufacturer. The conditions are often atrocious. Readers were rightly upset. But a fascinating response to the story came from the nephew of a Chinese worker who wrote in the comment section, and I quote, "My aunt worked several years in what Americans call sweatshops. It was hard work, long hours, small wage, poor working conditions. Do you know what my aunt did before she worked in one of these factories? She was a prostitute." The idea of working in a sweatshop compared to that old lifestyle is an improvement in my opinion. I know that my aunt would rather be exploited by an evil capitalist boss for a couple of dollars than have her body exploited by several men for pennies. That is why I am upset by many Americans thinking we do not have the same opportunities as the West. Our governmental infrastructure is different. The country is different. Yes, factory is hard labor. Could it be better? Yes, but only when you compare such to American jobs. He gave another example that I think every one of us can actually think through, especially with the recent lottery that just happened. And he talks about why people keep buying lottery tickets, even though as most of us understand, like, yo, if you took the money that you spend in lottery tickets and invested that thing over a certain amount of time, you would actually be able to grow your wealth. So it's like, the question is like, it doesn't make any sense to him why people would actually do this until he met somebody who explained something to him. The guy said, "We live paycheck to paycheck, and saving seems out of reach. Our prospects for much higher wages seem out of reach. We can't afford nice vacations, nice cars, health insurance, or homes in safe neighborhoods. We can't put our kids through college without crippling debt. Much of the stuff you people who read finance books either have now or have a good chance of getting, we don't. Buying a lottery ticket is the only time in our lives we can hold a tangible dream of getting the good stuff that you already have and take for granted. We are paying for a dream. And you may not understand that because you are already living a dream. That's why we buy more tickets than you do." I read that line and I was like, damn. So I guess the thing that I really wanted to share with everybody in this is, one, no one is crazy. Try to walk a mile in somebody else's shoe. There's so much information out in Google of how other people are able to live their lives. Don't focus on just those who are doing so well, but also look around you to understand the context and the perspective that people are coming from. One of the other reasons why this topic really came in my head is I had a discussion with a friend of mine. Well, closer than a friend, but a friend of mine. And we're both Nigerians, and we were talking about just our Nigerian stuff. For anyone who's listening to this and you're Nigerian as well, you understand when I say stuff, because Nigerians, we are extra. We are just extra. Like the way we do things, the reasons we do some stuff, we just extra. And we were talking about, Nigerians and parties and all this stuff. And I was just like, I don't get it. Like, I literally don't. Like, why do we spend so much money on parties, on being flamboyant, on all of these stuff? I still don't get it. But I want to understand why. That is the context that we come from. Why that is the normal thing, that if your kid is turning 1 year old, we got to throw such a massive party, or for weddings, we spend a ridiculous, exorbitant amount of money, or for any of these things, we spend an exorbitant amount of money on it. I don't understand it. But part of it is I came to the United States when I was 12. My family went through some stuff and we just opted out of a lot of things. And I've basically gone left for a lot of Nigerian cultural things. But I want to understand more of why. And really, I want other people to ask that question too, because I don't think we ask the question why nearly enough. I don't think we really pay attention to how much culture has influenced the decisions that we make. Now, of course, I have the opportunity to be able to say that because I live in the United States, and in the United States, it's a very individualistic culture where we're allowed to question a lot of things. But I just wanted to understand that more. And so I put out a tweet on Twitter. Of course, where else would you tweet? I tweeted out on Twitter that I'm looking for people who are Nigerians, first and second generation immigrants here in the United States, Nigerians, who are willing to have these conversations with me. When we'll record it, we'll have the interview, and we'll just talk about how our cultural context has shaped the way that we view money, the way we spend money, the way we've chosen our careers, and just the different aspects. Even like some things such as like, people back home asking you for money. Like the moment they find out you have a job and now everybody hitting you up for some money. Like how has that played a role in our finances? I really want to have these conversations with people. So if you know anybody who's interested in being interviewed by me or having these discussions, or if you're interested in having these discussions, please hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up on not Facebook. Do not hit me up on Facebook because I don't want to see it. Hit me up on Instagram, and you can email me at ramblingmindshow@gmail.com. I really want to have these conversations because I think it will be helpful for me. It's a selfish request because it's literally these conversations is to do two things for me. One, I want to be more in my culture. I want to be more of that community. But I also want to understand why we do some of the things that we do in our community. A lot of my friends are similar to me in the way that we view a lot of things. And so they are not going to be much of any help. I've had these conversations with a few of my friends, and plus they don't want to be recorded either. So that's why I have to put this this out there for other people who may want to see this. And this goes for anyone if you're immigrants of any kind, actually, in all honesty, all immigrants, especially African immigrants. I want to have these conversations of how your culture differs from mine and why we see things a little bit differently, or why you may do things differently than Nigerians do. Because, man, Nigerians, we are something else. We are special. But yeah, I just want to have these conversations. And I want us to ask the question of why. Just why? Like, why should I do X? Why should I do Y? Why do we do things this way and that way? What are some of the scripts that we have written into our minds that because of X, I must do Y? But yeah, that's the general idea of this episode. I hope y'all learned one, maybe two things out of this thing. And remember, nobody's crazy. Absolutely nobody's crazy. Everybody has a different cultural context and different perspective. Now, does it make it right? No. I would still tell anybody who's buying lotteries every single day, like, yo, don't do that. Like, put the money aside and you can start having the savings and all this stuff. But at the same time, I understand. I can sympathize with where they're coming from. And that's the main thing. In order for our society to move forward, we have to learn the art of sympathizing with others who may see things differently from us. But anyway, that's all I got for y'all in this episode. I hope y'all learned one, maybe two things out of this entire thing. And if you did, share this podcast with one person that you love, one person that you hate, and one person you're just kind of like about. And by that time, you to share it with every single person that you know. Remember, if you are interested in being interviewed on this thing, please hit me up at ramblingmindshow@gmail.com, or on Instagram at KelechIwuaba, or on Twitter at KelechIwuaba. So link is in the bio for every single thing that I mentioned, all my socials. And yeah, please hit me up so we can have these discussions. I really want to make this into a series. And again, like I said, it is a selfish respect. So God bless each and every single one of y'all. And I'm out. Peace.